Jim Crow, like that counts as apartheid, and we talked about South Africa, and you said that counts as apartheid. So I'm just asking, why is it that when the same thing is being done on land taken unilaterally by Israel, why does it stop being apartheid?
I don't think the same thing is being done.
No, I know you don't think. I'm asking you why you don't agree with me. You keep saying you don't agree with me.
I can say, if you like, let me get in more than a short sentence.
Of course I'm letting you. I didn't realize I was interrupting you. I'll go.
I mean, you just did it just now. Again, personally.
I didn't interrupt you, dude. I'm asking you questions, and you're giving me one-word answers. But, like, I'll go on mute.
Okay, I'm going to moderate a little bit. Yeah, her talking when you finish a sentence because she thinks you're done isn't her interrupting you. But I will, ensure that you get time to speak, so go
ahead. Okay, whatever. Yeah, so, I don't agree on that definition of apartheid. I think it's too broad. It doesn't include, it doesn't precisely pick out what we were agreeing on about Jim Crow and South Africa. And when you actually make a more precise definition of apartheid, such that it is about a certain country applying laws on its own territory to discriminate against a group of people that it considers inferior in some way, then I would say that definition obviously does not apply to the West Bank. For the first part of the definition, we don't even need to go into is there bigotry or Israelis against Palestinians? Is that bigotry on the level of policy or social influence, etc., etc.? Just the first part of the definition doesn't apply, i.e. the part that it's a country doing it in its own territory. West Bank isn't a part of Israel, so it wouldn't fit the definition of apartheid that I'm using.
Well, we'll come back to the definition that you're using because I don't think you've actually laid it out. See, I thought when I asked you about the two instances in question, the U.S. and South Africa, and I could have made it a longer introduction and asked about New Zealand and Australia and so on and so forth, but I thought that we had agreed on calling these two scenarios apartheid. Now you're sort of adding the question of attitude, the question of bigotry, and the question of within one country. But Israel doesn't have borders. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Israel doesn't actually acknowledge any borders. It has not committed itself to any borders. So what you call disputed territory, which is internationally recognized as occupied territory, this is under the jurisdiction of Israel, to all intents and purposes. That's what there's an entire body of international law that actually governs what an occupier's responsibilities are towards the people on the land that this occupier occupies. But even if we wanted to talk about so-called Israel proper, are you aware that Israel, to this day, has done the following? One, it has not defined what a Jew is. This is an internal constitutional dispute within Israel. Israel doesn't have a constitution, by the way, in case anyone wasn't sure. They still don't have a constitution. What they actually have is something, I forget what the name is, but they have something in the way of a first set of a first set of principles or something like that. And do you know that they still haven't defined what a Jew is? And do you know that nevertheless they have a citizenship law that is applied across 48 proper? When I say 48 proper, by the way, I'm talking about that strip of land that is not Gaza and that is not the West Bank. That's what I refer to as 48 proper because I don't recognize the so-called state of Israel. So inside Israel proper or 48 proper, they do actually have a citizenship law, and it governs what Palestinians are Palestinian citizens of Israel. Okay, these are citizens, right? It governs what they're able to learn of their own language and of their own history in the schools that they attend. That citizenship law is actually a refraction or an echo of early reservation law as it was innovated in the U.S. and Canada in order to govern the entry of indigenous peoples into citizenship. So I don't know at what point this begins to sound to you like there is. I don't really traffic in language like bigotry, but I just think that this question of citizen versus non-citizen has always been definitive of apartheid. I mean, again, which is why I told you, in the context of America, of Jim Crow America, black people were not citizens. I told you that when I asked you to like agree on the definition of apartheid, of actually existing historical examples of apartheid. I gave the example of the U.S. I'm not done. I'm not done.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not done.
Yeah, Miller,
I'm
they
not
said
done.
it was going to be between the two of them. So
She's making a ton of errors. Like,
So
there's
you're
some
Zionist.
okay, well,
So-
great.
so-
So your boy Zeleny, if she's making errors, then your boy Zeleny will correct her.
So in the U.S. and South Africa examples that I gave you, Zeleny, right? These are people who were living under the jurisdiction of, one party, and that party was controlling separate laws for them, right? And I asked you, would you accept that Jim Crow laws constitute a form of apartheid? You said yes. Would you accept that the separatist nature of apartheid South Africa is apartheid? Obviously, you agreed with that, right? And my question then becomes, what is it about the substantive operation of Israeli law in territory that it controls? What is it about that that differentiates it from the examples that I gave you? In the West Bank, you have separate roads for Arabs and Jews. You have one military institution that controls who comes in, who goes out, who travels between.
I feel like your question is going to get lost because you've given these examples. I feel like you should be able to answer it. Sorry to interrupt. Zeleny, you heard the question. She's asking you what differentiates it from Jim Crow.
I'm under the impression that I answered it twice now. Like, I can do it the third time, like, if it's necessary.
You haven't, though. I haven't heard what differentiates it.
Okay, so under, like, my conception of apartheid, it's about the country applying, like, discriminatory laws within its own territory, which USA did against black people, and South Africa also did against black people, which Israel is not doing against Palestinians, because the Palestinians who live in the territory of the State of Israel, like, also called, like, Arab Israelis, have full citizenship and, like, are not subject to discriminatory laws, whereas, like, it is applying some discriminatory laws in, like, what's called either disputed territory or occupied territory. And even if you call it occupied territory, as far as I know, under international law, like, occupied territories are allowed legally to have, like, certain types of laws where they, like, differentiate in treatment of different, like, groups of people, because, like, it's a extraordinary situation, usually connected to war, etc. And there are, like, various concerns. Like, it's assumed that this is not, your typical way of doing, like, how, like, you should run a state. No, this is, like, something extraordinary that's happening. It's like an exception, to the rule. So yeah, the difference would be, it's not like in USA and South African examples, it's a country applying it to its own territory. In Israel West Bank, it's not. Like, that's a difference that I'm talking about.
Yoko, sorry, can I just throw something into the ring really quickly and then you guys carry on? Like, at some point, can you address, like clearly there is a convention concerning apartheid. So can you, like, I don't know whether or not it's you want to appeal to that, Yoko, or Zeleny, can you show, like, why your concept of apartheid is more robust in the convention on the prevention of it at some point?
Why does he get to speak and I don't?
This is a debate between those two, and I get to speak because I'm a mod and I'm better.
I think Timothy raised an important issue that we can come to. But Zeleny, I just want to remind you of what you defined apartheid as. You said that it had something to do not just with territory, but with citizens. And what I'm reminding you of is that it doesn't, precisely because it has nothing to do with citizenship. It enables, I mean, you must be aware that African Americans didn't have civil rights until the 60s or the 70s, right? Like, that's when they literally fought wars on behalf of the United States without ever having a passport. So going back again to the example of the West Bank, and we can refer to international law. I think Timothy raises an important issue about that. There's an entire body of law that relates to, or a body of research on what constitutes apartheid. But Zeleny, I'm just asking you, if there is one side controlling territory, I mean, you keep saying disputed and occupied territory, okay? And that's fine. I'm just asking you, if I give you examples, concrete examples, not just of separate roads, but of the ability of the Israeli occupation forces to shut off water, to shut off supplies, to control people's movements between one city and the next, between one village and the next, to literally build a wall that is separating entire communities from one another. If I tell you there's one side doing this to another, and that there's one side determining who gets any kind of rights and who doesn't, at a time when Israel proper has neither defined what a Jew is nor drawn any borders as such, meaning it is currently in the process of a very, very real possibility of annexation, that a slow annexation that's been happening for years and for decades. And when I tell you that inside 48 Israel itself, it has neither defined what a Jew is nor has it acknowledged the full right of Palestinian Israelis to citizenship. It defines what a Palestinian Israeli is, excuse me, what an Arab Israeli citizen is according to the willingness of that Arab Israeli to learn their language and to do away with their own history. Like, this is an even more extreme version of reservation law, if you ask me. But I'm just saying, like, that citizen-making engineering process, right? Why is it that when Israel does it, it's not called apartheid, but when the whole world recognized that South Africa did it, it was called apartheid, and the world boycotted South Africa for it, and pushed it into at least abandoning de jure apartheid, like legal apartheid, right? At least in principle. Why is it that when America had Jim Crow, today we're capable of recognizing and calling it Jim Crow and recognizing the legacies of settler colonialism and slavery as racism, and saying that we support the civil rights movement and its products, its results? Why is it that when we talk about the history of settler colonialism in general, we have a notion of the evils that it committed in the name of building its progressive states, but when we point to an example of an actually existing state today carrying out the same practices, okay, on land that is taken by violence, carrying out the same violent practices, you hesitate to apply the same principle. It's the same practices of separation, the same practices of engineering what counts as a citizen and what doesn't through ethnic cleansing. It is the same principle of controlling an entire other population while leaving open the door to decide who gets to be Israeli and who doesn't.